This video is brought to you by NVIDIA RTX Remix, enabling modders to remaster classic games with full ray tracing, NVIDIA DLSS, NVIDIA Reflex, and much more. If you've seen Portal RTX or the upcoming Half-Life 2 RTX, then you've seen how powerful this tech can be. So to learn more, click the link below or stick around to the end of the video. Gamers! Alright, I'm sorry to interrupt your intensive Suicide Squad sessions, but it's time for the news show. Oh, what's that? You bought the deluxe edition so you could play 48 hours early, but the servers were offline for 12 of those hours, so you couldn't do shit other than stare at the login screen and mold on Reddit? Yeah, I know the feeling, because that was me too. But I'm getting ahead of myself because there was actually a bunch of other shit that went down this week before the release of that game, and all of it was in keeping with the other bullshit that Warner Brothers have pulled in the lead up to Suicide Squad's release. So let's start at the beginning, shall we? Obviously, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has not had a rosy reception. From the minute people learned it was a live service looter shooter with a cash shop and a battle pass, people were bummed out that this is what Rocksteady had been making for the last 8 or 9 years. It didn't get any better when people finally saw some gameplay, and it looked pretty average. Just kind of mindless, the anti-heroes lacked any sort of identity, and all the enemies had these big purple pimples we were supposed to shoot, all the guns looked really generic, the list went on. The reception to that reveal was so bad that it prompted Rocksteady and Warner Brothers to delay the game by about a year, which is a long time when we're talking about a AAA game being made by hundreds of developers. That is a big chunk of change for Warner Brothers shareholders right there. Fast forward to earlier this month, and Warner Brothers invited a very small number of media and content creators to a hands-on preview event. The select invite list was obviously in the hopes of controlling the message, but the strategy backfired spectacularly when numerous outlets like VGC, Eurogamer, and in particular IGN were highly critical of the title, with IGN going as far as to say as they just didn't like it, a rare headline for IGN to run at the top of a preview. The PR beat was such a disaster that it prompted Warner Brothers to release people from an NDA that applied to the alpha test that ran in December of last year. I actually got into that, which meant I could actually speak about the game with my own impressions video, link below the like button. TLDR, I liked it, but only really for its story and presentation, and I personally couldn't see how this thrives as a live service game because for me the gameplay just wasn't there. Anyway, that all happened, and afterwards everyone's kind of wondering if Warner Brothers are going to do pre-release reviews for this thing, because it is a very tried and true tactic to not do pre-release reviews if you think a game isn't going to perform well in the review cycle. Sure enough, no outlet got a review code for this video game. Warner Brothers offered no explanation as to why, but the net result is that this game went out with no pre-release reviews at all. For some reason, many people cheer when this happens, like it's a good thing that consumers have less information with which to make informed purchasing decisions, and they celebrate the based multi-billion-dollar corporations that are deliberately trying to pull the wool over their eyes. That's never made sense to me. I'm not saying that everyone should make all their decisions based on reviews alone, but what I am saying is that the review process plays an important role in helping consumers make an informed purchase, and not having access to reviews ahead of launch is hardly cause for celebration. Publishers are also kind of shooting themselves in the foot when they do this, because reviews are often the last line of defense in the QA process. Case in point, this game launched yesterday into early access for anyone that pre-ordered the deluxe edition. The servers went up, and within an hour they were back down again. It turns out there was a bug that meant that as soon as you logged into the game, you'd essentially skip the entire campaign and arrive at the end game with a bunch of loot and everything. It was like a paid progression booster, only now it skips the whole game for you. Huzzah! Ubisoft executives be like, write that down, write that down. The servers went down for like 12 hours with anyone who took time off work losing an entire day's worth of playtime. A day that they paid for, since early access was one of the biggest reasons that people pre-ordered this thing. That wasn't everything that Warner Brothers pulled this week though. There was also the last minute inclusion of Denuvo DRM anti-piracy tech, a tool that not only wreaks havoc on game preservation efforts, but also has been proven to negatively impact game performance in certain games. There was no warning that Denuvo would be added prior to launch, so Warner Brothers just slipped this in at the 11th hour because they obviously felt like people weren't hostile enough toward this video game. Then there was the whole IGN thing, where Warner Brothers appear to be punishing IGN for negative preview coverage by explicitly denying them review codes, when those codes will be sent out to other outlets on the day of release. That erupted on social media this week and became this whole thing when the IGN previewer, Destin Legary, took to Twitter and said, quote, I gave Curse of Osiris a 5.5 out of 10, and Bungie still sent us codes. Suicide Squad Warner Brothers not sending IGN review codes after my negative preview is ridiculous, and I'm not even on the review. Even the sponsored stream had characters fail to appear during cutscenes, while community managers deleted comments criticizing the gameplay. Several other previews echoed my criticisms, end quote. IGN were well within their rights to call this out, a tactic that is clearly designed to have a chilling effect on broader games coverage. For if even IGN, the largest gaming publication on the planet, are not able to voice honest criticism without fear of reprisal, then how can smaller outlets or creators who are dependent on access to drive traffic be expected to hold their nerve? That wasn't all though. Deluxe Edition pre-orders were meant to give players exclusive cosmetic outfits, and these rewards were also bugged at launch, meaning that players couldn't get their hands on them. When they did, they learned that the skins don't even have all of the color options unlocked, and if you wanted to unlock them, you have to pay real-world money. Very classy, Warner Brothers. Finally, more than a few people have now completed the Suicide Squad campaign, and it clocks in at around about 9 to 10 hours. That's according to multiple sources, including IGN's Destin Leggeri, who said he took his time while completing the campaign. He didn't just beeline it straight to the end. To be fair, 9 to 10 hours is kinda standard for a live service campaign, but I'd really hope that Rocksteady would buck that trend and deliver a lot more in that campaign experience. Sadly, that is not the case, and many people are feeling pretty disappointed with that runtime. So in 1 week, we got surprise DRM, no early access reviews from any outlet, punishing IGN for negative preview coverage, 12 hours of server downtime that robbed people of the very thing they paid for when they shelled out for early access, bugged cosmetic rewards, pre-order bonuses that require you to spend more money, and a campaign that you can clock inside of 9 hours even at a steady canter. I think it's fair to say that the launch week has gone just about as well as everyone expected for this one. I really hope the Suicide Squad's endgame is exceptionally good, because it's going to need to be if the game is going to come back from all of this. Alright, I wish I could segue to a rosier story, but the truth is, there's none of those this week. It's all pretty grim, and unfortunately it doesn't get much more grim than what went down this week at Microsoft's gaming division. You've no doubt heard at this point that earlier this week, Microsoft suddenly and unceremoniously announced that 1,900 people were being made redundant across different parts of Microsoft's gaming operations, with the overwhelming majority of those cuts being centered on Activision Blizzard. This was first reported by The Verge and later confirmed by Microsoft. Those 1,900 jobs represent about 8% of their total gaming operations, and it follows Microsoft laying off around 10,000 workers last year, with some of those being at the likes of Bethesda, Xbox's headquarters, and 343. Phil Spencer released a statement on the cuts, which he attributed to the Activision Blizzard King acquisition, saying, quote, "As we move forward in 2024, the leadership of Microsoft Gaming and Activision Blizzard is committed to aligning on a strategy and an execution plan with a sustainable cost structure that will support the whole of our growing business. Together, we've set priorities, identified areas of overlap, and ensured that we're all aligned on the best opportunities for growth," end quote. I think the idea that there would be overlap between these entities makes sense, but it's also been revealed that developer Toys for Bob is losing 40% of their staff, and Call of Duty developer Sledgehammer Games is losing 30% of their staff. Where's the overlap there? It was also revealed that Blizzard's ambitious survival project, which has been in development for 6 years with over 100 staff assigned, that has been axed. Blizzard say that a number of those affected people have been assigned to other projects, but one person on the team said that the entire survival team was let go. Further reporting from Jason Schreier of Bloomberg revealed that the project was massively hamstrung by technical issues, with the engine choice seriously hampering development efforts. There was hope that with the Microsoft acquisition, the project could pivot to Unreal Engine, but instead the entire project was scrapped and will now never see the light of day. It wasn't just job losses on the front lines either. Blizzard president Mike Ybarra is out. It's unclear the circumstances of his exit. Just recently he'd been saying that they'd have to remove him with a crowbar, but this month he and Microsoft are saying that he chose to leave. Either way, he is out and he's being replaced by one Joanna Ferries, a former Call of Duty franchise manager and a former VP of the NFL. That is an interesting CV for someone now heading up Blizzard. To cap all of this off, just hours after Microsoft made this announcement, Microsoft became the second ever company to achieve a $3 trillion market cap. These layoffs do make a little bit of sense in that surely there's going to be some overlap when you merge two massive entities, but 1,900 people, 30 to 40% of entire studios, massive ambitious projects cancelled outright, that does not pass the sniff test, and there's every chance that a good portion of those people could have kept their jobs and been assigned to other projects. Sure, it would have meant that Microsoft would have made 0.0001% less profit this year, but it would have made for a better and more sustainable gaming industry. Speaking of sustainability, or lack thereof, Embracer Group. Just when you thought you couldn't hate them anymore, they're ready and willing to prove you wrong. This week they sacked 97 people from Eidos Montreal, the studio they snatched up for a song from Square Enix about 2 years ago, well before Embracer's deal with the Saudis went belly up, leaving Embracer over-leveraged and overexposed. Eidos Montreal themselves put out a statement confirming the news first reported by Bloomberg, quote, "The global economic context, the challenges of our industry, and the comprehensive restructuring announced by Embracer have finally impacted our studio. The difficult decision has been made to let go 97 people from development teams, administration, and support services," end quote. What were those 97 people working on? Oh, nothing. Just a new Deus Ex game, the very thing we've been begging for years and hoped and prayed was coming ever since Embracer took possession of the studio and dangled hope of a franchise revival in front of us like a set of keys before a toddler. It is so frustrating to know that we were this close to seeing this franchise make a comeback, but now it is surely dead for at least another 5 or 6 years as Eidos Montreal work on other projects and as Embracer look to reduce their investment in big AAA bets. Hell, that wasn't the only set of Embracer layoffs this week either. They also let go 80% of Rycon Games, the studio behind Ruiner. 60 to 70 people lost their jobs there, and with only 20 to 30 left, it's unclear if they'll be able to continue work on their current project codenamed Final Form. There was also layoffs at Black Forest Games, the team responsible for the recent Destroy All Humans remaster. That team lost 50% of their people, and this is the team working on The Last Ronin, the adaptation of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles graphic novel. It is unclear if that project will ever see the light of day now as well. There really doesn't seem to be any limit to just how ruinous Embracer's impact has been on the gaming industry, and by all accounts, there's plenty more pain on the way. Finally, while we're on the topic of layoffs, People Can Fly, makers of Bulletstorm and Outriders, let 30 of their people go. They were working on a new project being published by Square Enix and attributed the layoffs to budget limitations and shrinking scope. All told, if we add up the layoffs from 2023, we get to around 10,000 jobs lost. We just ended the very first month of 2024, and that number is already over 6,000. Unfortunately, I expect the layoffs update to remain a very sad but very regular recurring segment in This Week in Video Games. A quick lightning round to finish off. The lawyers have finally come for Bloodborne Kart, just as we all hoped they wouldn't, but secretly we knew they would. For those unfamiliar, Bloodborne Kart is a fan mod, and it was never going to be monetized. It's been in development for a long ass time, and the developer has been very upfront about the fact that yes, this is absolutely based on Bloodborne. This week they were contacted by Sony's lawyers who requested/demanded that any mention of Bloodborne was scrubbed from the project. Fair enough, I guess, but it would also have been pretty rad if they were just kind of cool with it and let it go out as it is. The project will go ahead and will still be released quite soon, but the initial January 31st release date is no longer on the table. If you're wondering how Netflix's push into gaming is going, here's one number that gives some indication. The Grand Theft Auto trilogy has been downloaded 18 million times through the Netflix app. That's according to mobilegamer.biz. Netflix didn't confirm that number, but they did say that this has been by far and away their most successful launch, with people signing up for Netflix just to play GTA. Netflix has opened first-party development studios and has clearly signaled big intentions on the gaming front, so expect them to make some huge plays over the next few years. Speaking of apps, Apple is now allowing game streaming apps on the storefront. Before, if you wanted to use things like xCloud or GeForce Now, you had to do so through a browser window, but this change will allow native apps, which do provide a better experience. Those apps aren't live yet, but do expect them imminently. You know what else you can expect imminently on the App Store? Fortnite. For real. Well, so long as you live in Europe. Fortnite has been absent from the App Store and the Google Play Store for years now, ever since Epic decided to declare war on those storefronts owing to the 30% cut that they demand. Epic spent hundreds of millions of dollars in legal fees and walked away with not much to show for it, as the court did force some concessions that both Apple and Google are able to cheekily sidestep through the wonder and magic of malicious compliance. Bottom line, Apple and Google still get to collect their pound of flesh, and with that battle now lost, Epic is going to have to pay the piper just like everybody else. Expect Fortnite to hit the app stores in the EU in March, and likely other territories after that. Nintendo 3DS and Wii U online services will go offline on April 8th of this year. This was just announced by Nintendo after their online storefronts were wound up some time ago. You'll still be able to download previous purchases, but playing games with or against other people or utilizing any other sort of online infrastructure will no longer be possible. Interestingly, Street Pass will still work since that uses local communication, which is awesome because Street Pass totally ruled, especially at gaming conventions. Used to get a lot out of that feature at those events. The video game adaptation Gold Rush has already suffered a brutal and disappointing casualty. The Final Fantasy XIV TV series is dead. This was announced some time ago as a partnership between production house Hivemind and Sony Pictures, and while they really hyped it up, I kind of struggled to see how you could make a live-action Final Fantasy TV show without spending all of the money under the sun, or more fittingly, the moon. Sadly, I was right. The showrunner had this to say on Twitter, quote, "The size and scale needed to do it right proved too much for anyone to want to risk. Amazon came closest," end quote. After Rings of Power, maybe we dodged a bullet on this one. And finally, Focus Home Entertainment is getting its third name change in as many years. It used to be called Focus Home Interactive before getting streamlined to just Focus Entertainment, which is a good name if you ask me. Very soon though, Focus Entertainment will be known as Pull Up. Like pull up, but one word. Like skill up, but with more pulling. I wish I was pulling your leg, but I'm not. This is a real thing that is happening. Focus are a French company, so I wonder if they are unaware of what pull-ups are in English-speaking nations. I'm of course referring to nappies, or as you Americans call them, diapers. Best of all is the date this change takes effect, April 1st of this year. A really well telegraphed April Fool's joke perhaps? Let's hope so, because the name Pull Up ain't it. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, if you're a fan of Sam Barlow's work, then you're gonna love this. Barlow is of course the auteur behind the likes of Her Story, Telling Lies, and the recent Immortality. He's been teasing his new projects for a little while now, but this week they've been revealed. The first is Project D something. The rest of the word is deliberately redacted. I told you it was an auteur. That is how these people roll. Incidentally, Edmond actually interviewed Barlow about this project back when Edmond was still with his previous publication, GameSub, and here's what Barlow had to say, quote, "It's a whole thing, and this is my return to making a 3D, third-person, character-based video game, but it's bringing all of the immortality stuff with me, all the tricks," end quote. For a more traditional Barlow experience, you may prefer Project C. Again, the rest of it is redacted. This is another game that he's working on, but this one is the FMV style experience that's been his go-to for a while now. He'd earlier told Kind of Funny that the game is, quote, "in the tradition of Immortality, building on some of that tech but going in a cool direction," end quote. No dates for either of these titles, but they are now on Steam, so you can add them to your wish list if you would like. The Horizon Forbidden West Complete Edition for PC was announced some time ago, and this week it got a release date. It'll arrive on March 21st. Don't forget that bundle also contains the Burning Shores DLC update, which is meant to be pretty solid. Interestingly, the PC port does support 48:9, meaning that you can run a triple monitor display for this. Rip to your GPU if you're going to do that and crank all the settings. If you start to smell something burning, Alt F4 immediately. The Death Stranding Apple iOS port was delayed recently, and it turns out there was a very short delay indeed, as the title will hit iPhones and Macs today. It does require an iPhone 15 Plus or above, and it's 50% off if you pre-order it. Jesus, that's kind of a little bit worrying to be honest. It's 77 gigabytes on your phone, and we know that for a fact because Edmond actually got early access to it. Here's what he had to say about it, quote, "Some generous post-processing effects and the size of the screen help you ignore some of the downgrades, and you can absolutely get pretty absorbed into it once you connect a controller and stop trying to look too closely for differences. But only for a little while, because your phone will get hot to the point of getting overheating warnings, at least on our preview version," end quote. Personally, I feel like any game that can bring your device to the point of an overheat warning shouldn't be on that device. But that is just me. Here's a cool announcement. Ubisoft are hosting an open beta for Skull and Bones. Absolutely anyone can play the game for a full 4 days, kicking off on the 8th. No pre-order required. Just log in and you can start playing, and that'll go right up to the game's release. Best of all, progress from the beta will carry over to the full game. While Warner Brothers are out here doing stingy-ass closed alpha tests and denying review code to reviewers for their upcoming live service, Ubisoft are just like, fuck it, everyone can play, no strings attached. Archer Skull and Bones' absolutely cursed development timeline, it is at least a little bit funny that it's entering the market with substantially more goodwill than Rocksteady's follow-up to the legendary Arkham trilogy. Alright, I didn't believe this until I saw it for myself, but there's a 3D Dragon Ball fighting game on the way, and it's called Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. That isn't the unbelievable part though. What's unbelievable is that the developer, Bandai Namco, have released the first 24 characters on the roster, and it's 11 versions of Goku and 13 versions of Vegeta, and there will absolutely be more versions of Goku and Vegeta. This announcement was met with absolute euphoria by the DBZ community, and the trailer got over 1 million views in just a few hours. DBZ has lost none of its luster over the years, and this one is sure to go pretty large when it releases at some point in the future, no date yet. 2 game cancellations this week, both of them pretty screwy for different reasons. The first one is Warhaven. Now this one really knocked me over because I remember seeing all of the pre-release hype for this one, and it looked great, like a more magical, fantastical version of Chivalry or Mordhau. I assumed that it was doing okay-ish, but I never looked at the numbers, and it turns out that it's been averaging a player count of around 200 concurrent players since December of last year, even though it only launched in September. This week, publisher Nexon pulled the plug, announcing that the game will be taken offline on April 5th of this year. It is always such a fucking bummer to see actual things that people worked on for years just zapped from existence. It doesn't happen for TV or music or books or movies, except for Batgirl, but it happens in video games all the time, and it's just really shit. I feel like there should be some laws mandating that these games should support some sort of peer-to-peer architecture so they can live on when the servers go down, because I'm really sick of this happening. And there is no better example of how ridiculous this situation is than the next cancellation, which came at the same time as a release date announcement for the thing that got cancelled. I'm not making this up. The game is called Love Live School Idol Festival 2, and it's a mobile rhythm game. It's out in Japan, but a global port was in development, and the developer announced that it would arrive on February 2024. Happy days. But in the same tweet, the very same tweet that they announced the release date, they also announced that the game would be taken offline in May 2024. They said, quote, "We appreciate the love and support you've shown, and we're committed to making these last few months an unforgettable moment," end quote. It's like, bro, the last few months are also the first few months. What the fuck are you talking about? What is happening here? Live services are not well, and the industry needs to fix this mess, because if games are getting cancelled in the same tweets that they're getting announced, then things have well and truly gotten out of hand. Alright, let's calm down a bit. What came out last week? Well, Enshrouded was one of the biggest releases. Despite its indie status, it came out of the gate swinging with a very strong 84%, very positive on Steam, and over 12,000 reviews counted. Plus, it also peaked at over 160,000 concurrent players, which certainly isn't Palworld numbers, but it's pretty damn respectable. Critics are also enjoying this one, but given its early access nature, they did comment that the game still has some ways to go. IGN scored it a 7, saying, quote, "Enshrouded's mix of Valheim-style survival and Breath of the Wild-style exploration make for a wonderful pairing, but it still has a slew of early access kinks to work out," end quote. Attack of the Fanboy summed it up quite well when they scored it a 3.5, saying, quote, "At times, it feels like I'm playing Valheim with a Dark Souls-inspired mod and some Zelda tools. I very much welcome those additions, but they don't ever feel enough to make Enshrouded feel significantly distinct," end quote. I kind of landed in a similar spot in my own review, link below the like button. I like this a lot, in fact, but the systems that underpin it are fairly surface level, and as such the game can feel spread thin. If those systems were deepened during the early access period, then this has got a great shot at a fantastic 1.0 release, and I certainly hope developer Keen Games gets there. That one's out right now, exclusive to Steam for the moment. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is out now as well, and we briefly discussed that one last week. It's very good. I know that because Edmond is a massive RGG nerd and he loves it. All the reviews seem to back him up. It's at a very positive 90% on Steam, and critics have it at the same spot on OpenCritic, a mighty 90. GameSpot's Michael Hyam is a self-acknowledged Like a Dragon pervert, and he had a ball with it, though he did have some complaints too. He scored it an 8 out of 10, saying, quote, "Infinite Wealth takes 1 step forward and 2 steps back, leaving conflicted feelings amid its outstanding RPG systems and phenomenal character moments," end quote. Eurogamer also loved it, scoring it a 4 out of 5, saying, quote, "Violent stakes once again meet zany shenanigans in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, the series' much improved second RPG," end quote. Tekken 8 also rules. Big week for Japanese heavy hitters, it seems. This one also landed a mighty 90 on OpenCritic, Critic, GamesBeat scored it a 4.5 out of 5 and said, quote, Tekken 8 is a robust package that features some of the most satisfying digital fisticuffs I've ever seen, end quote. Most reviews are some variation on that, with very few complaints surfacing. Tekken is back, and it's unlikely to be leaving center stage anytime soon. Only other shout this week was for Phantom Abyss, which launched into 1.0 last week after being in early access since last year. This is a really interesting concept. Imagine the part in every Indiana Jones movie where he needs to escape a collapsing tomb, but an entire game built around that. What makes it more interesting is that you're racing against the ghosts of other players who tried and failed to make their escape, which makes the whole thing very frantic. Reviews for this one are okay-ish. They tell the story of a game that didn't quite live up to its full potential. Recent Steam reviews put it at a mostly positive 70%, and the few critics out there are at around the same. Digital Chump scored this one a 6.8 and said, quote, The whip and phantom gameplay involving other players' trial and error are unique, but its clunkiness, difficulty, and disparate progressions are worth a pause. I'm confident that additional polish and content are coming down the pipeline, but I need more from the current state of the game, end quote. So what's coming out this week? Well, JRPG fans, you guys are eating good this week. As the start, you're getting Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, an action RPG from Cygames that also had Platinum Games involved at one point. Nobu Uematsu of Final Fantasy fame is also involved as one of the game's composers, so that's pretty cool. This one hits PlayStation and PC on February 1st. But the main course is surely Persona 3 Reloaded, long held up as having the best storyline in the entire Persona series. This is a complete remake of the seminal 2006 release, but it's not the first time that Persona 3 has been re-released in some form. There's been Persona 3 Fez and Persona 3 Portable, making this the fourth time the game has been re-released in less than 2 decades. Naughty Dog surely eyeing that record when it comes to The Last of Us, thinking, we can top that. The remake delivers fresh visuals, full 3D environments, a number of quality of life improvements to its gameplay flow, additional social and character scenarios, enhancements to an already excellent combat system, plus it also smooths out some of the rough edges that made the original release a little frustrating at times. This is looking to be one hell of a package, and it's out on February 2nd for all platforms bar Switch. Plus, it's coming to Game Pass day one. Hell yeah, man. Vampire the Masquerade Justice arrived on PSVR 2 and Quest a little while ago to decent reviews. It's sitting at a 73 on OpenCritic. February 2nd, it'll arrive for PC, so you'll be able to play it through Steam with any compatible headset. Biggest release of the week is Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, but we have well and truly covered that one to death. We'll check back in on reviews next week, but I'll also have my own review up over the course of this week. Be sure to subscribe and ding that bell so you'll know the minute that review is live. And finally, Foam Stars launches on PS4 and PS5 on February 6th. This is definitely not Splatoon, so please stop calling it that. That's according to Square Enix, of course. Everybody else, we're calling it Splatoon, because it's absolutely Splatoon, except it's, foam instead of ink, and instead of creepy squid creatures, it's VTuber avatars. I did play this one a while back, and it is a good time. I don't expect this to set the world on fire, but I think it'll find an audience if Square Enix stick with it. They do have long-term plans for this one as a live service, but as we've seen many times in this episode alone, that is no guarantee that those plans will come to fruition. Do keep in mind that this is the PS Plus game for February, making it very easy to jump into and have a crack. After that, it'll be around $30 or so, depending on your region. While we all patiently await the arrival of Skate Story, put this on your radar. The skating genre has laid essentially dormant since the glory days of Tony Hawk and Skate, but it's stirring back to life. The Tony Hawk 1 and 2 remaster was a great start, the announcement of a new Skate game is even better, and the indie scene are bringing up the rear with some fascinating projects. Meet Helskater, a game that describes itself as a skateboarding action roguelike. It uses Tony Hawk style skating, and doing tricks will charge your abilities, allowing you to then slay monsters which have taken up residence in your half pipes and on your grind rails. What a sick concept, right? I love that. That's awesome. Doesn't hurt that the lead developer is one Steve Swink, who worked as a member of the Tony Hawk Underground development team. I think this looks fantastic, and I'm really keen to get stuck into it when it launches into early access on February 15th. If you'd like to wishlist it, I've left a link to it over on my Steam Curator page, which also has links to all of the other put this on your radar stuff I've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and we are in the very last week of the month, so be sure to grab your PS Plus and Prime gaming stuff before it disappears. We do know that Foam Stars will be the PS Plus headline for February, but at the time of writing, we don't know the rest of the lineup yet, so we'll circle back to that next week. Right now, Epic are giving away Infinifactory, an automation-style puzzle game from Zachtronics. But later on in the week, they'll be giving away Doors Paradox, a cute little escape-style puzzle game that involves solving door-related puzzles. Fair enough. Outside of that, don't forget that Persona 3 is on Game Pass this week, and that's all for sort of free stuff. Time for our feel-good story for the week, or maybe I should call it our feel-go story for the week. Because last year, the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam hosted a Pokemon exhibition. I'm quite sure I don't know what Pokemon has to do with Van Gogh, but if I had to guess, it's probably got something to do with getting kids interested in art through the magic of Pikachu. The exhibition featured 6 paintings of Pokemon done in Van Gogh's distinctive art style. To be fair, they are quite handsome, but I don't know that they warrant their own exhibition. I think the real draw card was literally the card, since the event was handing out a limited edition Pikachu trading card plus other merchandise. You might think, alright, sounds nice, good on them, but that's because you are normal. If you were a Pokemon weirdo and you went to this event hoping to score said merch, you would have encountered scenes like this. Demand for the merch and the cards was so high that it led to riots in the store and insane scalping online, with copies of the Pikachu card going for hundreds of pounds on eBay. That all happened last year and we thought that was the end of it, but it turns out this story had one more twist left. This week, 4 staff members at that museum were suspended for, quote, embezzling Pokemon cards, end quote. It turns out that these people had stolen an entire box of the rare Pikachu cards and were presumably selling them on eBay. They also tipped people off about when tickets to the exhibition would go on sale, since ticket sales had to be throttled due to excessive demand. A later update from the museum revealed that the 4 staff members will not be returning to their jobs. Their suspension from their posts at the Van Gogh Museum is now permanent. So you might say they were let go. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, with that stirring wordplay out of the way, it is time for me to bid you a fond farewell. I'm off to play Suicide Squad for the rest of the week. That is if I can log in. We'll see how I go with that. 1 like on the video equals 1 good luck to shill up as I push through burning the midnight oil in the hopes of getting that review out in a reasonable time frame. Like I said before, if you'd like to be notified when that video goes live, then be sure to subscribe and ding the bell. February is here. No word of a lie, we have at least 10 game reviews planned for this month, one of the biggest in the history of the channel, so I hope you'll join us. A big thanks for stopping by, always appreciate your company, and a big thanks to this week's sponsor, NVIDIA. So we all know NVIDIA for their top-of-the-line GPU hardware. You want to buy the best, most powerful, most feature-rich GPU on the market, then NVIDIA GPUs are the obvious choice. But NVIDIA do more than just hardware. In fact, one of the reasons why their hardware is so powerful is because it's backed up by a range of software-based technologies that enable huge leaps forward in terms of speed, performance, and fidelity. Take full ray tracing, for example. This is technology that simulates light like never before. It's not just for more accurate reflections, it's for more accurate everything. Interactions with volumetric fog effects, ambient occlusion, fill lighting, and so much more. Now, full ray tracing is the sort of thing that was only present in the most cutting-edge new release games, but not anymore. Recently, NVIDIA released something called NVIDIA RTX Remix, and it's a tool that allows modders to essentially remaster classic games with full ray tracing while also supporting NVIDIA DLSS for better performance and NVIDIA Reflex for reduced latency. So how does RTX Remix do this? Well, it's complicated, but essentially, graphics are rendered in a pipeline that has many stages, and the final result is the image that we see. RTX Remix essentially becomes one of the steps in that pipeline, and it's able to inject things like remastered game assets, ray trace lighting, DLSS, and more. It's the exact same game and same engine, but it just looks way better because lighting has such a transformative impact on scenes, and higher res, more detailed assets certainly don't hurt either. This technology is literally transformative because many of the classic games we know and love can get this overhaul, and it's consumer-facing technology that's intended to be used by modders. It's not a tool that requires a massive team of developers. Independent modders can use this and can produce astounding results. So what does this mean for non-modders such as myself and probably probably you, it means that thanks to Nvidia, you should absolutely expect to see many more of these RTX Remix overhauls coming to your favorite classic games very soon. This tool was just released into beta after being teased for months, and so right now modders are already working with it. I'm really excited to see what that community's got cooking. It's all thanks to Nvidia, who don't stop at just having the best hardware on the market, they're also committed to having the very best, most cutting edge software tools as well. To learn more about Nvidia RTX Remix, click the link in the description below. Thanks Nvidia for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.